We're standing in the interior, in practically the middle of the Weldon Brook Wildlife Management Area. Behind me, down this rocky slope, is a beaver meadow. There are small braided streams running in every direction. The forest is what you would call late successional forest. Trees have begun to get old and fall down. There's dead wood all around me, behind me, down the slope. Large tree fall gaps at the edge of the beaver meadow that were blown over in last year's hurricane. Seedlings and saplings are germinating. Almost no invasive species whatsoever because we're so far from a road. Also, lots of rare plants. There are over 800 species of rare plants in New Jersey that the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection has documented, and Weldon Brook has at least a dozen of them, if not many more. We're still gathering that data and trying to figure out just what's here. But unfortunately, a plan to create habitat for the very rare Goldenwinged Warbler is being proposed for this very spot. Now, the Goldenwinged Warbler is a seriously declining bird, and it has certain habitat needs. The problem is that this very patch of forest that's been chosen as future habitat for Goldenwinged Warbler is not the right place to be doing this kind of work. We have to walk about 20 minutes over rock-strewn boulder fields and very undulating forest away from a road to get here. A brand new road has to be bulldozed through a rocky forest in order for logging machines to get here. This very spot where I'm standing is slated for a forest stand improvement, which means that a decent amount of canopy will be removed and light will come streaming in, threatening many of the rare plants that require shade, cool temperatures, and no competition from sun-loving plants. On the other side of the beaver meadow, that habitat is slated for a virtual clear cut. It's a forestry term called a modified seed tree harvest, which is simply a way to say we're going to cut down almost everything and leave a few trees standing. But the conditions that will be created will be those conditions that you find in a clear cut. The habitat here around this beaver meadow is already habitat for Goldenwinged Warblers. There's lots of low herbaceous vegetation in the beaver meadow where the Goldenwinged Warblers like to feed. There's low shrubby thickets all around the edge of the beaver meadow where the Goldenwinged Warbler would likely build its nest, as well as tall forest in the background where the Goldenwinged Warbler would also spend a lot of time foraging. What we have here is Goldenwinged Warbler habitat surrounding a beaver meadow. There's another beaver meadow about 200 yards away with more Goldenwinged Warbler habitat. Not far from here, there's a power line that could be managed, and the forest along that power line could be managed for Goldenwinged Warblers. Unfortunately, the Weldon Brook forestry proposal was created without any knowledge of the rare plants that are here. The trees were inventoried, and a map was created showing a new access road that has to be built in order to clear and thin the forest around this beaver meadow without understanding the nature of the underlying resource that's already here. You cannot find a more intact, pristine, late successional forest habitat anywhere in New Jersey. This forest is already on its way to being old growth. It doesn't need any help. There's absolutely no reason that roads should be built into this forest, threatening the rare plants, ruining the forest interior conditions, to create habitat that may or may not eventually house Goldenwinged Warblers, and in the meantime threatening the existence of literally a dozen or more rare plant species. Here we are in a wonderful light gap. A big old red oak tree has come crashing down. Light is streaming in. A whole series of trees are competing now for this light. There are oaks and birch and maples. Who knows who's going to win the race to the forest canopy? Herbaceous plants are growing a little bit more profusely in this small light gap. It's about maybe 20 yards wide, and light streams in for a few hours during the day. We can create lots of gaps like this without having to disturb this forest. This is the kind of frequency of light gaps that some of these rare species need. They don't need swaths of early successional habitat with simulated clear cuts that are 30 acres in size. It's just not necessary. We don't need to build roads through soil that has never had roads built in it before. This forest was never converted to agriculture. If you look on the Vermeule historical maps from the 1800s, this is shown as forest. Sure, it's been cut over many times with people with hand tools and carts driven by animals and primitive vehicles that didn't leave any ruts in the forest. You can't even find the roads anymore. The soil here, since it's never been disturbed, is resistant to invasion by invasive species unless a massive disturbance comes in. If we create early successional habitat all through this forest and do modified seed tree harvests and do forest stand improvements that require logging roads that come through thousands of meters of interior closed canopy forest, the pickup trucks will follow, the off-road vehicles will follow, invasive species will get dragged all over the forest, and there won't be any way to stop from this patch of forest from being converted into a weed pile. If we were to do a Goldenwinged Warbler project here with volunteers, having them come in, carefully select trees which we're going to cut down. We don't even have to cut the trees down. We can just girdle some trees, let them become habitat for rare red-headed woodpeckers and other species that need tree cavities, such as barred owls. And then, when they eventually fall, we won't be able to take this product out of the forest. So what? It doesn't need to be taken out of the forest. It doesn't have to be logged, hauled out of here on logging roads. It can fall onto the ground, become logs where salamanders find refuge, fungi slowly decompose the organic material and create soil where rare plants can germinate and where new seedlings can get established. Here we have a yellow birch tree that was probably about 1.5, almost 2 feet in diameter. And it looks like maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, it fell to the ground, and its trunk lies rotten here, strewn across the forest floor. And it's been releasing nutrients onto this slope for almost 2 decades. Initially, there was a small burst of sunlight. And here we have, in this tiny gap amongst the ferns, the rattlesnake orchid. Now, this is not a rare plant. It's quite common. Seldom do you see such a profuse flowering patch because just the right combination of nutrients and light and water occur here. And so we see many individuals in flower at the same time. We have to be incredibly judicious where we do management of our forests. We can't just look at them as an open palette where you find large trees that have some value and take those trees as your primary focus for your management. So here we are at the old power lines that cut through the Weldon Brook Wildlife Management Area. These power lines have been here for nearly a century and have been Goldenwinged Warbler habitat for a very long time. The Highlands Coalition has asked the New Jersey DEP to restrict its forestry work to areas very close to the power line. We don't feel there's any need to build roads deep into the interior of Weldon Brook Wildlife Management Area when there are miles of power line habitat and adjacent forest that could be managed with no impact on forest interior species, since we're already working in a fragmented area, an area that's going to remain fragmented and open forever.